It's actually really funny, I think, how Poilievre and Trudeau have started to like kind of like Poilievre is very similar to the way that Trudeau was when he first started as the Liberal leader, you know?
Yeah, and I would hope that we would be starting the decade of conservative because honestly, I'm really on board with leaving the liberals behind at this point because I think that we've really just for the last decade and not even the last decade, aside from Harper, we really haven't had much of a like before Harper it was Mulroney, right? We haven't had much of a break from the liberals, and I think that we just need to try something a little bit newer. And I think that going with the Conservative Party the way it is now would be a good move for the most part, just because of not just Polyev, but a huge chunk of the party as well. Like I feel like is you know qualified for those positions. They're not just picked on virtue or diversity, because I feel like a lot of Trudeau's cabinet picks and other picks, like they weren't really there for more than optics. I feel like most of the time, but
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that Trudeau valued the optics of his cabinet a lot more than he did the competency of the individual people. And I think I said this before that the Anita Anand interview that she did with CBC was actually one of the things that made me a little more confident in Mark Carney's ability as a leader, because he clearly picked her because she could actually communicate the idea he wanted her to communicate. And it wasn't that he just gave her like a script to answer. He said, you understand this, just go answer questions about it, you know?
and at the same time, I don't know if he's even going to be keeping her in cabinet at this point because the cabinet we saw Mark Carney pick could have just been because that was what his options were, whereas now this election's
Yeah.
fully underway. We're going to be seeing more and more, across the board. We have former Vancouver Mayor Greg Robertson and other players kind of emerging that could be possible cabinet picks that I think might have been tapped
Mm-hmm.
in by Mark Carney. And I don't know. To me, I really don't
I
think
think that
that going with the liberals is the best choice at this point, just because I think we need change. And I think Mark Carney himself, even though, part of me feels like he might just be leaning into a lot more of the centrism, even though it might not truly represent his values, just solely because he knows and understands why people didn't like Trudeau. And he's trying to win over those, people who might have absolutely disliked Trudeau. He's trying to win them over this election.
I would agree. I think that Polyev is actually doing the same thing, though. Like he is actually moving closer to the center than he naturally sits. But I think that that's a sign of a good leader, right? If you're responding to the will of the people as opposed to trying to convince people that your ideology is the one that they all need to hold.
Well, at the same time, though,
I think
I think
that's
there's a difference between avoiding showing your character and just kind of saying, hey, I've changed my mind. Like, because that's kind of where Poilievre's gone with a lot of this stuff, is like, hey, I've changed my mind. Whereas Mark Carney, because we don't really know who he is, it's kind of come to a point of like everything we find out about him, it almost seems like, well, why not like this game of almost like this game of slow reveal. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but like we don't actually know much about him. And I think it's working to his advantage a lot right now as well. And it's possible that as time goes on, the more people get to know him, the more he's going to become unpopular, right? And not to mention all this recent rhetoric with Trump. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, but check this out.
Well, absolutely. But we had a very good conversation. Mark called me today at 10 o'clock. We put out a statement. We had a very, very good talk. He's going through an election now, and we'll see what happens. But we have Liberation Day, as you know, on April 2nd. And I'm not referring to Canada, but many countries have taken advantage of us, the likes of which nobody even thought was possible for many, many decades, And, that has to stop. We're going to end up with a very good relationship with Canada and a lot of the other countries. Some we probably won't. It won't be so pleasant, but
Apparently,
I think he's trying to mediate.
Apparently, it was a good call. So, like, to me, I don't know. I just take it as like, what the hell is going on right now? Like, it seems weird to me, but at the same time, it reminds us that, we shouldn't get lost in this culture war, especially because these guys aren't. These guys don't give a shit. Like, they're just doing whatever they want to do, right? Like,
well, that's what I was gonna say before. Is even with like, have you seen Trump talk about when he refers to the trans stuff, and how he basically just talks about it as if it's like the best thing ever, because every time he brings it up, everybody claps. And he's like, we made this ad and it really resonated with people. People really, really care about this. And like, he clearly does not care. In his first term too, there was statements he'd made saying that it was, he was fine with it. He was totally fine with people transitioning. And now that he's using it as a political cudgel, it's whatever his supporters want it to be, right? Like he'll say whatever he wants them to say or whatever they want him to say.
Yeah, well, I think at the end of the day, though, too, it's beyond that. I think Trump isn't really thinking; he's just kind of doing and reacting. Like I think he just kind of does.
I would agree.
I think it's getting worse with his age, and he's just kind of like almost to a point now where I'm like, I don't even know if he's all there. Like he just seems like he's like got no inner self anymore, and he's just doing everything like his inner monologue is on the surface. Like I don't know if that makes sense, but like. Just some of the stuff he says.
No,
like,
I agree.
I don't see the angle. And I think that's where people need to stop making excuses for him and saying he's playing some kind of 4D chess or something. Like, because it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, he's not. He's just, at best case scenario, probably losing it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's I don't even know, honestly. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, there's plenty more where that came from. You can find the link to the full episode in the description below. Click now, watch, and get grounded with all of us. Thanks for watching.